What is going on, everybody? We're just waiting for some people to get in. I was a little bit late getting to the computer here. We had baseball practice tonight, so bear with me. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free type them in the comments section below, and we will definitely answer. We're just going to kind of go through a quick rundown of what's happening, kind of where everything's at, and um, see what see what everybody else has to say tonight. Who's with us tonight? Why don't you guys go ahead and post names and where you're from. I'm just curious to see where everybody's coming from. If everybody's local, um, Wolf River guys, Winnebago guys, Green Bay guys. We're going to talk a little bit about these things tonight. 'Tis the season for flies. Who's ready for the draft tomorrow? Actually, who's going to go up to the draft tomorrow, up to Green Bay, and deal with all the crazy people? It looks like there's going to be quite a few guys up there, but yeah. Hey, Tom. Thanks for joining in. Um, Heading to Wolf on Friday. What should we focus on? Well, probably a good thing to focus on would be fish. What are you guys looking to catch? Are you guys looking for walleyes, looking for white bass, mix of both? We're in that transition period right now where, for the most part, all the females have spawned out, and they are heading back down, or a lot of fish are actually back out into some of the lakes, both Upper Lakes and Winnebago. A lot of the males are starting to come back down, and I always tell people, once water temperature hits that magic 50-degree mark, put the minnows away and start looking at other ways to catch fish. And one of my favorite ways to catch them is just dragging crawlers, Carolina rigs, dragging crawlers along the straightaways on the river, anywhere from below the Northport Bridge in New London all the way down to the mouth of the river. Pretty much any straightaway where you see those humps, right? That you see those current breaks. Just dragging crawlers with a 16th ounce egg sinker, just above a barrel swivel, and then usually about a 4-foot lead and just a plain hook with a bead, or not. You don't even need a bead. You can just use a plain hook and then a half a crawler, and cast that thing out, just a little ways, and hold your rod tips up in the air and just let it drag. Very seldom will you get snagged with that setup. Most of the time, the sinker and the hook will just kind of walk over everything. The only time you're really running into issues if you run into a bunch of wood, and get snagged up on the wood. But that right now has been pretty dynamite for myself and some of the other guys I know that are out really doing well dragging crawlers. And then in Oshkosh, and in Fremont as well, guys are finally starting to see some of the white bass. The flies, whether you want to cast them, pull them, whatever you want to do there, that's really kind of turning on pretty good right now. And we're going to talk a little bit about how I run my flies and some of the colors. I've been tying here. I use a little bit more hair, and they're typically a little bit longer than what most of the bait shops in that carry a lot of the guys that tie around the area here. Just a little bit different. The nice thing is if they're too long, you can always cut them. If they're too short, you can't really add more to it while you're out on the water. Some of my favorite colors, I like the purple chartreuses, purple whites. You see me use a lot of purples. Probably one of my staples, my favorites, is the red and purple. This is great for walleyes and white bass. And then, depending on water clarity, is when we kind of get into, the chartreuse and white, or just a plain white works really well too. Now, one thing you're seeing is I use a lot of Flashabou. And a little bit different than what some of the other guys tie with, where it's kind of like that holographic or shiny hair. This is actually, that Flashabou, that shiny holographic tinsel that really makes it look lifelike in the water. Really looks like shiners and stuff swimming through the water with that. And you can fish these bare. You can fish them with a minnow if you like. When we get into the warmer water temperatures like this, I stop putting minnows on. We're running them just, on a lead. And how I tie them is I will run 3 per lead. So I have all 3 lines, or all 3 hooks available down there. And then, a 3-way swivel, and then your dropper sinker down below. Depending on the currents, like in Oshkosh, you pretty much have to use, like a 2 to 3 ounce, sometimes even a 4 ounce weight for your dropper weight, just to make sure that you can stay at like that 45-degree angle out the back of the boat. One thing you don't want to do is have 800 feet of line out because you don't have a heavy enough sinker on when you're pulling those flies upriver. So making sure you have a good heavy weight on, and match it, with a good rod. I'm running like a 15-pound braid down to my 3-way, and then all my flies and my droppers or my sinkers are on typically 15-pound Invisex from Seaguar, and you really don't have to worry about the line spooking the fish. These baits are moving pretty quick, and it's not like you're really finesse fishing these walleyes and white bass. So something a little bit stronger, just to be able to take not only the shock, because when these fish hit, they'll hit like a freight train with these flies. So we're using a little bit heavier line for that. But the other thing too is I want those leader lines with the flies to have some resistance. And the reason for that is so you get that whipping action. If you've got, let's say, a 4-pound or a 6-pound lead that is very thin and cuts the current, for the most part, those things are just going to stay straight. You're not going to get any current affecting that line. I've dropped the underwater camera down and just kind of played around with different lines and watching to see how these flies actually look. And every time you rip it forward, everything straightens out. But as soon as that sinker hits the bottom, you get a little bit of slack. There'll be a big whip, like a big bow in your leader line, and you'll pull it forward again, and it straightens back out and sinks everything back down. So you're really getting an undulating motion with those flies swimming through the water, just to kind of give it a little bit more attractant. And when it's dirty, obviously you're maybe covering the bottom 3 to 4 feet, versus just keeping them tight to the bottom. So those fish get a little bit better chance to see the baits and kind of hone in on them and attack them. Let's see. Now, for Tommy coming from Sheboygan, kind of a mix. So right now, if I were looking for walleyes again, I'd be dragging crawlers down below the Little Wolf, up by New London, down below the Northport Bridge, that long straightaway over by Wylands. Right in town in Fremont has been really good, just dragging crawlers right down the center of the river. Down in front of the Party Doll Fleet, that long straightaway can be really good. And then any of the clam beds, and I'm not going to give up the spots, But if you know of any clam beds on the river, those spots too, walleyes love sitting on those clam beds coming back down. And that's where you're going to find most of the white bass as they come up too. You're going to be in a little bit deeper water, typically in that 12, 13 feet of water or so when I find these deeper clam beds. And a lot of the white bass and the walleyes will all be sitting there kind of together. And, when you're driving upriver, or driving down river, and just take your time, use your side imaging, use your electronics, and you'll see the fish sitting. Right now, they're still pretty schooled up. When you find a good pot of walleyes, they'll be 15, 20 in a school. And with the white bass, it seems like they're in groups like 10 to 12 right now. Making their way up the river. So just like the walleyes, they'll kind of take that slow water to get upriver, stay out of the current, and just making their way up, taking every shortcut they possibly can to kind of save energy. And we're just seeing them on the side imaging. On the inside corners of the bends. They're down in the center of the river behind all those current humps. So, just again, using electronics is pretty important. And once you find them, what I like to do up in the Wolf versus down in Oshkosh, Winneconne, we're doing a lot of pulling, right? We got three-way rigs, and we're using our bow mount to steer us around and move us around, and have the rods, just pulling as we're going up. With the Wolf up, north of Chico's, or anywhere, I guess, from the mouth of the river all the way up, there we're casting flies. So we're using like a 7'3" medium action, and just casting. I like to kind of cast up current. Maybe if your boat is spot locked, cast not perfectly straight up, maybe at like a 45-degree angle, kitty corner from the bow of the boat, and then just kind of start snapping, letting that sinker hit the bottom and work its way down through the current. And what I find is when you find these areas where you've got all these humps, and these walleyes and white bass are sitting on those bottoms of those humps, if you can cast perpendicular to those, and once you kind of hit that sweet spot and you bring those flies right through that valley and you hit it just right, you're going to get bit pretty much every single time. And then what happens is, we always joke about once you start learning kind of how to catch that one, then you want to try and catch, the doubles and then work your way up to the triples. And it's really all about feel. White bass, especially, the opportunity arises for them to eat something. Once they see one eat, the rest of them just kind of follow, and it turns into a giant feeding frenzy. So it's just good to cast out when you feel that first one, give it a good hook set, but then still kind of pump it a little bit and work it back, and you'll feel that second or third one hit. And then you just start having fun. And it doesn't take long to fill up a live well when you're bringing 2, 3 in at a time. It's still just a little bit early. The fish are starting to come up. A lot of the bigger females and stuff, I believe a lot of them have, gone up already past New London in some areas. You always get that kind of first push of females that are either sitting in the river or have been out on Poigan, and they're just making their way through. And we're getting, some of the males, not a whole lot of males yet. Most of them all been females. Even in Oshkosh, and then through Butimore, Winneconne, and getting up into the mouth of the river. It's all going to start flowing here pretty quick. That being said, with the walleyes, absolutely done spawning, the females have come back. But if you're looking for something really fun to do with the family and the kids right now, nothing fishing related really, but the New London is always a great time, great spot to go up and take the kids to see the sturgeon spawning. They are in full swing right now. Pretty much any of the viewing areas, Bamboo Bend, and everywhere along X there, all the areas that the fish spawn over the weekend here should be pretty good viewing. Water temperature is really climbing, and fish are fish are up in the rocks, up in the shallows. And if you've never seen it, it is a spectacle. You definitely want to try and do it at least once in your life. Most people go back year after year, or even, multiple times a year, just because it is a pretty neat experience to see these giant, big females, right up close and personal. And it's pretty cool, especially for the kids. They get a kick out of it. And not too often you get a chance to see, multiples of, big fat females right up next to you. You can get down on the rocks, and, if you really wanted to, you could put your hand down there and touch them. That's how close they get. So if you've never done it, take a look. Come up to New London, and plenty of spots to go do that. So going back to kind of what we're talking about as far as where the walleye's at, dragon crawlers, and just early mornings, and then I think right before evening, have kind of been a little bit better, I guess. But there's always that midday bite. That 11 to 2 can be really good this time of year. And then for people looking to do something maybe a little bit different, calmer evenings up on the Wolf from Shiocton all the way down through New London. If you can find some high water where these walleyes are going up into the trees, they're feeding on bugs, they're feeding on frogs, and such a fun way to fish is to either just take hair jigs, cast small crankbaits, salmos, flicker shads, hit sticks, cast those things up into the trees and just retrieve them back. And there's so many walleyes up in the trees. And again, side imaging will show you when you find those big schools, and they hit like a freight train. It's so much fun. Very productive way to catch fish right now. And especially when you got a good calm evening, and you can get up and not have to fight the wind. Just casting small crankbaits up into the edges of the trees, even up in past the edge, and then just slowly retrieve it back. And you'll be surprised in how many fish you get doing that. Not a whole lot of guys do it, a few locals and stuff, but something to try. And it's a lot of fun. And then the other thing too, another way is if you see that, and you don't want to take the risk of getting crankbaits hooked up, you're seeing a bunch of fish up in the trees in the shallows. Slip bobbers with leeches or slip bobbers with crawlers. Minnows fine. Small treble hooks, almost kind of like what we do ice fishing, and just cast slip bobbers up in there and just start working them back, almost like you're crappie fishing. And those walleyes will take those bobbers, all night long too. So plenty of different options, out of the norm than to just go and sit and drag minnows and vertical jig. That's kind of more of that cold water on the up run, during the spawn. But once they get done and they're cruising back, dragon crawlers, casting, crankbaits and stuff like that up into the trees, and then down in Oshkosh, just pulling flies are really kind of our three most ways we like to catch fish is doing that. The bluegills, panfish, water's starting to heat up really nice up in the channels on Winnebago, Poygan, Butamore. Pretty much all the channels right now are loaded with fish. Just be smart about it. I've seen a lot of guys harvest and harvest and harvest, and to me it's kind of one of those things where granted they're not on their beds, but they're going to be. And leaving these fish alone a little bit in the springtime is a little bit more important to me than what it used to be. I like to just let them spawn. They're there. And with how many people have been fishing these panfish this spring, they've really fished a lot of these, a lot of fish out of the channels. Watching a few guys that I know have gone out, 2 times a day and filling up, multiple times a day. And it's just sad to see. I thought with the internet and stuff like that, guys would, finally start to get educated, but it just doesn't seem like guys care. And, if the fish are there, they're going to go and just pillage them. And I guess, stock their freezers for the summer. I don't know. But if you're looking to get out, definitely a lot of fish in the shallows right now, and a lot of fun. Oh, I'm getting a phone call here. Um, oh, the missus. Let's see. I'm gonna send her a note real quick. She is just driving back from work. So now we're talking about the rivers, but a lot of fish are back out into the lakes actually, and now's the time that if you like slip bobber fishing, getting on top of some rock piles, especially when the water starts to warm up, anywhere you've got sun kind of beating on some 6 to 8 foot rock piles or some shallow points, Sunset, Oakwood, Stony Beach, all these areas up by the Nina Lighthouse. The walleyes come in there and feed at night, early in the morning, and slip bobbers with leeches or crawlers, or if you can find, a lot of guys even like to use, big, if you can find some chubs or some bigger minnows. I know Chico's has had some really big lake shiners that would be perfect for putting on some treble hooks below some slip bobbers. That's a great method to target right now. And just throwing hair jigs too, just casting hair jigs, slow retrieves, and just like you would up by Green Bay or any of the famous walleye spots. A lot of fish have really came back down into Winnebago, and I know there's quite a few fish in Butamore right now too. So lots of options, and it's only going to get better. The white bass fishing is just getting started. Looks like our weather is finally going to cooperate. We're getting some rain, bringing some water levels back up. Current's pretty good right now. So everything's kind of setting up in our favor. And as long as we don't get some major cold front or a big snowfall, everything should, stay pretty solid, pretty steady, and fishing should be good. Let's see. Got some questions here. Let's see. What is your favorite way to fish the river in Oshkosh? So, my favorite way to fish the river in Oshkosh, either pulling flies, in front of Fratello's and up the, below not Skipper Buds, Spellman's, that stretch through there. And then, fishing some of the shallow rocky areas. They're almost kind of like small wing dams. There's just areas in the river in Oshkosh that you can find behind the bridge pilings, and anywhere there's spots that the bait's going to kind of set up. If there's a back eddy and the walleyes are just kind of sitting there waiting for food to come back down, they get swung right back into their mouth. Easy food for them this time of the year. Those are kind of the spots that you want to look for. And then obviously as these fish migrate down, out in front of the mouth of the river, it's no secret. Oshkosh is kind of one of those things where it's really easy to see where everybody's at. It's also really to see what everybody's catching too. So always a good indication, if you want to go figure out what's happening, just drive down to the river. You can drive down by the mouth of the river. You can drive over by, Rainbow Park, or, any one of the bridges, and just kind of sit and watch boats and see what's happening. And if it's going on, you're going to see guys catching fish, constantly. If it's not, then they're probably not in there or not eating that day. One thing about fishing the river in Oshkosh too is if the wind is blowing upriver and it backs up the current, forget about it. It can shut a bite down as quick as anything, and makes it very, very tough to fish that river. And that's when we'll typically go out to the lakes or maybe head up into the Wolf and try and get away from the wind. And that really kind of plays true to all river fishing, is when the wind blows that water backwards and stops the current. It just seems to shut the bite down. Doesn't mean that they won't, that they're not going to bite, but more times than not, it's going to be, very poor fishing in situations like that. Guys are, asking about the trolling. Absolutely. Trolling right now, if you can get up into any of the shallow bays, on especially the upper lakes, Poygan, Butamore, or trolling out in front of like a Stony Beach or the shorelines at night, or if you got some wind blowing in, trolling, long stick baits or small, the Selma Hornets, the number fives, number seven, hit sticks are some of my favorite baits to troll this time of the year. The Yozuri pin minnows, the let's see, the baby junior thunder sticks, all those just stick style baits and trolling, like 1.5, 1.7, maybe tops, kind of a little bit slower. And if you're a troller, a lot of guys were getting some nice fish this past week before the tournament, and the bigger walleyes too. On the west end of Poygan, up along some of the shorelines, the rocks in Clark's Point or Clark's Bay, and then the bays right outside the mouth of the river in Oshkosh too. Right around by Stony and all the way down towards Jesuit. That whole shoreline can hold fish. Right away springtime, and doesn't mean that the fish that stay out in the lake too to spawn, which is getting to be more and more. It seems like every year. Those fish over on the east shore, guys are getting them on the rock piles already. Up on the north end, by Nina, Menasha, in front of the rivers. Those are great spots to start trolling, and more so because the water is so gin clear. Low light conditions, right away in the morning or late towards the evening. During the day, it's nice to have some chop, some wind, so you can kind of sit back and cast slip bobbers or cast hair jigs or whatnot to them, and just find spots that are going to be a little bit more protected from the clear water. Springtime can always be one of those goofy times of year. The fish are there, but you can really spook them. So long casts are important, and trying to don't go motor over a spot if you know where the spot is. Get up to where you need to anchor your boat versus driving over the spot and looking. I guess that's where the forward-facing guys are a little bit more. Um, I guess what's the word I'm looking for? They've got the upper edge because they don't have to drive over the spots. They can use your forward facing to kind of scan an area before you actually fish it. So um, just a lot of great opportunities this time of the year. How late in the year does the walleye bite stay good in Oshkosh? That stays good all year. Once the fish come into the river in Oshkosh, and they come back down, current and as long as you've got current in the river in Oshkosh, there's always going to be walleyes around, whether it be the 41 bridge or all the way down through to the mouth. That can stay good all year long. And then the white bass, the white bass come and go. They'll be coming up here, over the next week or two, and they'll be do their thing, and typically towards the end of May, Memorial weekend or so, they're already starting to come back into the lakes, and there'll be a few fish left in the river, but for the most part, by Memorial Day, first week of June, most of those fish are out of the river and back out in the lakes. What's up, bud?
Nothing.
Ready for bed?
Yeah.
All right, Xander came, say good night. Good night, bud. Love ya. See you in the morning, okay?
Okay.
Let's see what else we got. Ray, forward facing is cheating. I'm not, I have it. I don't really use it much. I use my side imaging more than anything. And, my forward facing, I'll use it pan fishing over the deep basins. Or, if we're out over deep water on Green Bay casting, it's nice to kind of know what's down there, what you're seeing. So you're not just thrown into the abyss. But, yeah, everybody's got their opinion on forward facing. Have you ever targeted white bass in the lake before they start to run? No, Matt, because the walleyes are such a big thing. Springtime, as soon as that ice goes out, we're in the boats chasing walleyes. I know I'll have plenty of white bass action after the walleyes are done. So we try and capitalize as much as we can on the walleyes. And then once they're done and, heading back and the white bass get into the river, I very seldom get a chance to get away, even through that month of May, to go and chase them out in the lake because everybody wants to go chase the white bass in the spring. And, I'm okay with that. But, when it comes time to just myself, I typically we'll put the white bass stuff down and go chase some walleyes. I love springtime, that May, when they're starting to get into the weeds, shallow rocks, real shallow water, stuff that's warming up super quick. That's some of my favorite type of fishing. I love throwing different baits, different plastics, hair jigs, stuff like that up for these fish. And then once May's done, we get into June. Then it turns into more of the typical summer patterns out on the Bago system. Ray's Ray uses his forward base in the snipe muskie. That's probably one fish that is going to suffer the most. I think out of all the species that forward facing guys use this for, the muskies I think are going to suffer because they show up like a sore thumb, and you can drive around a lake all day long and just pick out fish after fish after fish and know right where they're sitting and cast to them. Whereas walleyes and stuff, they're moving constantly, and they're not really sitting still like a muskie does. So um, fun tool that is for certain. Let's see, what are some of your favorite shallow water bites? Are there any places to target walleye on the east shore right now? On the east shore, absolutely. Any of the rock piles, the shorelines. If you're, like I say, if you're a troller, running boards at night or just before dark is a great tactic right now on all the rock piles and all the shorelines. Over by was it St. Catharines Bay or something like that? There's a nice sandbar. Some of the sandbars behind some rock piles or little points or whatever that are over on the east shore, and trolling those things at night early in the morning. Great areas. They're all just kind of hanging out over those sandbars looking for food, and great areas to target. Don't be surprised, you'll probably get a bunch of crappies too. Matt asks how often are you using live bait nowadays, and have you ever fished walleye above the Amro Dam? The funny thing is, and I've talked about this year after year. I need to go learn the Fox River above, Eureka, and I just, again, it's having time to do it. I just don't have the time to go and explore new water like that in the heart of the season. I know a lot of guys are doing very well, and they did very well this spring up above Eureka. There are a lot of walleyes that use that fish ladder to get up from Bago, go through Butamore and into the river into Fox, and go to up to the Princeton Dam and turn back around and come back. So if you're a local guy and know that river, kudos to you, because it's one of those areas that doesn't get fished real hard, and the guys that do very well. As far as how often I'm using live bait, cold in the cold weather, early spring, on the uprun, we're using minnows, shiners, fatheads, whatever. Probably more for an attractant than anything. And then once we get that 50-degree mark, crawlers, and then even at that point now, I start dragging, a lot of artificials. Me personally, I very seldom use live bait. My clients, I've got minnows and crawlers and stuff on there, just because of the learning factor and how to use artificial versus live bait. So if I got guys that are good fishermen in the boat and they can pick up on kind of what I do, and I can teach them, I'll definitely teach them how to fish plastics versus live bait. I honestly think live bait, you get pecked, you lose live bait. Number one, it's going to be super expensive this year. Crawlers are going through the roof. Flats are going to be over $100, probably pretty much all year long. And they're messy. Just a lot of factors that really turns off the live bait for me. I do just as good on artificials, plastics. Oh, here's Presley. Good night, honey.
Alright.
Love ya.
Love you.
See you in the morning. Um, when we're using artificial baits, plastics, hair jigs, whatnot, there's not that, oh, tap tap, there's a bite. It's usually a wham. I mean, they smack those baits. You're typically fishing a lot more aggressive. It's a bigger profile, and if the fish are hungry, they're going to eat anything. I mean, whether you're fishing live bait or plastics, it doesn't matter when they're hungry. But when they're not hungry, you got to trigger that bite. And I think bigger baits, triggering those reaction bites is what those plastics and bigger artificials do, and that's why you get a lot more positive hookups. And it's not hooked in the very tip of the lip. Most of the time, the baits are halfway down their throats, and you're doing surgery to get some of these things out. So definitely, if you can get away and teach yourself how to fish artificials, it can be a lot more productive. And in some days, I think it's easier fishing, to be honest with you. When you throw a hair jig in the shallows, is it bare or tipped with something? Again, going back to that, it's typically bare. If anything, I'll put a small, I'll cut a paddle tail off, or some sort of plastic that's got a little bit of motion in the tail, just for a little bit of a trailer, and throw that. But most of the time, it's just bare. These fish, once you learn kind of how to throw hair jigs up in the wood in the shallows, good pops, good twitches, and let that current work those hair jigs. Again, they don't mess around. They come in, they're either pinning it down to the bottom, and you're getting a pretty good hook set that way, or it's all the way down their throat. Nice thing is when you're fishing that shallow wood like that, you can get away throwing some pretty light jigs, some 16th ounce, 8th ounce hair jigs, up into that slack current, or get behind the trees, and just let that thing fall, and then just start twitching it back or popping it back. And it doesn't take much for a walleye to open its mouth and completely inhale an 8th ounce hair jig. They suck in so much water so quick, that those baits are gone. And like I say, there's no question that you have a bite. They are there. It's definitely a lot more fun than, ooh, oh, no, that's not a bite, And I always, the famous word, hook sets are free, right? If you think you feel something, set the hook. Says, hey man, thanks. One day on Poigan, you let me and some buddies follow you out to avoid open water. Yeah, no problem, man. Glad everybody stayed somewhat safe this winter. It was finally a good year for ice, and hopefully we have another good one next year. It was a good change of pace for certain, not having to worry about everything all winter long. Arthur, as far as the flies things go too, right away early in the season, when we're fishing Dubuque rigs, and what a Dubuque rig is, it's a 3-way, but instead of having just a weight on the bottom, we've got a heavy jig. And then that heavy jig will typically either have a piece of plastic, or live minnow on, and then up to our 3-way, and then the lead out the back will be flies. And when it's super cold like that, I've got no problem putting some minnows on. But this time of the year now, we're not tipping any of the flies with anything. Just a straight fly. And I might spray a little bit of scent or something on the flies. That can make or break a day sometimes too. But for the most part, just straight flies, and then just pumping them, making sure that you're getting those flies to open and close as you're bringing them through the water, and the fish will eat them. They love the flies. Matt seems like he says seems like a lot stay for the summer. So yeah, I mean in the river in Oshkosh, and actually all the way up, you got to remember is the only thing that's going to bring fish back out of the river is when the water drops down and they can't get to food sources. So right now in the spring when the water's high, and we've had plenty of years where that water will stay high in the trees, well into June, sometimes even July if we have a wet spring, wet summer. And walleyes have current, they have protection, they have food, they've got warm water, they've got deep cold holes. There's no reason for those fish to leave, up in New London, Shiocton area until that water recedes to the point where everything is, kind of dried up. And then they'll finally start to head back down. But there's always fish in the river. You've got resident fish that never leave. They're always there. They, sit in the same spots, all year long. And, you can typically, if you know what you're doing, you can pretty much get walleyes in the river all season. But, once this water starts to drop and, the bait's gone, the current's slowing down, it's not favorable for the walleyes. And that's when you'll see the last mad rush of fish head back to the lakes, which is typically around that June time frame when you see that really big influx of fish kind of come through Poygan and Butamore again, and that's usually when the cane bite gets going good, that first week of June, and it's telltale every year. It's kind of interesting how to the T these fish are, and it's usually within a week or two every single year for as long as I can remember. Favorite crank on Bago, and how often you drop spotted drop shot, probably, I'm guessing, Matt. I've tried the drop shot thing, but with the Ned rigs, there's no reason to drop shot. Fishing Ned rigs, you can fish Neds in the weeds, you can fish them, on the rocks, in the sand. You can fish a Ned anywhere. And then the other thing that that's really kind of been hot for me is throwing the small little chatterbaits in the weeds too. Those things have been absolutely deadly. I've multiple times now over the last 2 years, I've had walleyes jump out of the water, and I swore I was catching a smallmouth, and they're walleyes that are coming up, and they hit the bait from they swim up and hit the bait so hard they literally jump out of the water and kind of swim back down. It's pretty crazy when you get into a good weed bite. Let's see. Favorite crank. Favorite crank on Bago. Oh boy, if I do any bit of trolling, which I really haven't done much the last few years, it's flicker shads, flicker minnows, Salmo hornets. The hornets are pretty deadly, pretty hard to beat those. And then the hit sticks have been a pretty good favorite of mine too. Early on in the season when it's still cold. When I say cold, once the water temperature gets into the upper 60s, lower 70s, and go to more of a faster action, faster moving bait, where these long stick baits, very subtle movement, but with the hit sticks, they're making noise, and they've got the rattles and stuff too. So anything, just anything that's very subtle moving in the springtime, and then as it gets warmer, going to more faster radic actions and the scatter wraps and stuff like that that are kind of all over the place do really well. Let's see. As far as a brand of chatterbaits, I'm a Z-Man guy through and through. Pretty excited now. We've actually got a baby jack that just came out. Really hard bait to get. It's very high demand, and that's going to be a killer bait for walleye fishermen once they get up into the area. So take a look, and we're going to shoot some video and do some video on how to kind of do that for walleyes, what to look for. Because it's not, you can't use it in every weed area. There's different scenarios that it works better than in other situations. So as we get into the season, stay tuned because we're going to talk a lot about that kind of stuff. Different non-traditional ways for catching walleyes. Catfish tips. Boy, the as much as I love to fish them, I'm not really, the catfish expert. We do good, there's some things I've kind of figured out, fishing on in the river in Oshkosh, looking for the deep holes, and again, just using your electronics to find those fish in those deep holes. And everybody thinks you need to run really big baits for catching all these flatheads and such. And I don't find that to be true at all. If you find a catfish laying in a hole, and you present him a little Scooby snack, whether it be a jig and a crawler or, leech or, a small, 3-4 inch jerk bait, something that's going to swim by his nose and it can sense that or it smells something. Again, their mouths are this big, right? All they got to do is whoop, and stuff comes in and, the battle starts. So, just kind of finding out where those catfish live and looking for those deep holes is, half the battle. Getting them to eat, is not really that much of a rocket science. It's, guys with big, big sinker rigs with suckers or bluegills or any type of live fish for that matter, putting them right into the holes. But I kind of like fishing one fish at a time. Find a fish, see a fish, and start throwing to it. The other thing that they really like, and I've caught a lot of fish on them the last couple of years, are the um, willow vibes. The bladed jigs with like a 3-inch jerk shad on the back. And once you find those fish, cast up current and just reel real slow and let those bladed jigs just vibrate along the bottom and drives those catfish crazy. And they just absolutely inhale them. So another great tool, another great bait for river fishing, even in the lakes. I know you guys, you followed along here the last couple of years. Those willow vibes have been a staple in my boat. They're easy to use, very easy to cast. Cast and retrieve, slow retrieves for clients. Doesn't really take a whole lot of knowledge to fish those things. And when the fish eat, they eat them pretty good. So just again, non-traditional things that really a whole lot of people have never even seen. They're hard bait to find. There's a couple bait shops around the Winnebago system that are now starting to put them in. But even, for the most part, most people are still having to order them through various tackle places. So all kinds of fun things. I mean, the biggest thing about fishing is you never know everything, and unless you try new stuff, you don't know. You won't know. So, my biggest thing always is when the bite is good. I don't need to catch fish all day long. I want to figure out what else works. And if I've got people that are catching fish, I'm going to let them catch fish, and I'm just going to start throwing crazy stuff at them because I know they're eating. And if I can find something else that these fish haven't seen, or something that is going to give me the edge over somebody else when it comes time to tournament fishing, I'm going to try new things and see what works. And a lot of things that we've done over the years has kind of opened the eyes for walleye fishing and tackle manufacturers as a whole, developing new style baits and new techniques and tactics and such for catching these walleyes. Because the days of seeing 100 boats out on Winnebago trolling the mud, those days I think are over. I mean, most of these guys now, I mean, a lot of the tournament guys especially, got the forward facing, and a lot of people would rather set the hook on a fish than just reel something in. It doesn't mean that trolling isn't a very productive way to catch fish, because it is. It covers a lot of water. And when you find those big schools, you obviously have 6, 8, maybe 9 lines in the water going through these big schools of fish where you can get multiple fish on at a time. That's something we're not going to do, throwing one jig at a school of fish. We're going to catch one at a time. So it has its places, to each their own. And for the most part, if I'm not obviously not fishing tournaments, We're looking to go have fun and set the hook on some fish, and we're going to do a lot of jigging. So if you are looking to get out and you want to kind of learn the techniques and spots and what to look for and what to do, that's one nice thing about what I do with my clients is not only are we going to go catch fish, but I'm going to teach you how to catch fish, and I want you to be able to go out the next day by yourself and do it on your own. That's my goal at the end of the day. Now we hopefully will catch fish in the meantime, but some days, and I even get guys that tell me like they're not here to catch fish; they just want to learn. And I like those days because it forces me to try new things as well. And we'll go to spots that I know hold fish, and we'll teach whatever tactics I know that are working. And then again, I'm not too concerned about putting 30 fish in the boat. More concerned about figuring out what else these fish will do or how else we can get them to eat, and that's what makes fishing fun for me. Is just all the new things, getting over the olds. Kurt asked if I ever slip bobber for walleyes. Yeah, we'll slip bobber. If I got my kids or I got some people that just like watching the bobbers go down. But here's the thing. So if we're pitching hair jigs or pitching Ned rigs or something like that on a rock pile, we've got one rod in our hand. We can only fish one rod. That's when we'll throw out a couple other slip bobbers around us, and make sure we get all the lines in the water. And whether you're throwing on a hole crawler, a leech, or a treble hook with some minnows, it all depends on time of the year, on what you're using for bait. But slip bobber fishing is a lot of fun. And if you have any specific questions on that, I can try and answer. It's pretty basic for me. We've got some just long slip bobber rods. I run a 10 or 15 pound braid with my bobber stop and the bobber on the braid, and then a barrel swivel, and then typically like a 3 to 4 foot fluorocarbon leader below that. And then just typically like a small jig or a treble hook with a bead, or a regular just a plain hook with a bead. And the reason that's set up that way is, one, if we've got leeches or crawlers, when you're reeling stuff in, the line always likes to get twisted. Reduces all the twisting from reeling in the crawlers, that barrel swivel. And then the other thing it does too is that it only allows your bobber to slide down until it hits that swivel and can't go any further. So it doesn't slide down when you cast and hit your sinkers and then keep sliding your sinkers all the way down. That barrel swivel stops your bobber and allows you to not get everything all messed up. But a pretty simple way to fish, and can be a lot of fun. The crawler price jump, with the tariffs and everything that's going on. I've heard and seen some wholesale prices already touching $100. Right now, wholesale pricing around here is around $80. So that means you're going to see over $100 probably retail for most of the places. Last year already, bait or gas stations and the DMF bait cups and such like that. They were already getting over $5 a dozen. But I've seen as high as like $6.99 a dozen. So you're talking 50 cents a night crawler, which to me is just absurd, especially when you're out there fishing and you pinch off half a crawler, right? And you throw half of it away. Well, it's like, okay, you're just pitching quarters in the water at this point. So that's another reason why I really am focused on using artificial bait, because, as with anybody else right now, now is not the time to be pissing money away. You want to make sure that what you're doing is working and being efficient, and not wasting money in bait. So it's hopefully this tariff stuff will get all figured out. And I know in the meantime, I am going to wait for the rainstorms and go pick worms any place I can find. The only problem where I live is it's all sand country, so it means I got to drive somewhere to where there's clay and go find some crawlers someplace. Find somebody's golf course. Let's see. Matt, as far as the Ned rig stuff, if you do some searches, I've got all kinds of Ned rig videos on my YouTube page. Angling Buzz has got a bunch of my stuff out there. There's a lot of different videos I've done over the years, last well probably 3 years on fishing Ned rigs. I think I've pretty much covered every base there is, as far as what to look for a structure, sizes, colors, how to fish them, the equipment, rods, all the different things that you need to know to learn how to fish Neds. I've got quite a few videos out there. And if you have any other questions, feel free, message me, private message me, whatever, shoot me a text, and I'll do whatever I can to help you out there. And come with questions. Every week we got questions. Feel free to ask, and then you can go out and try it, and come back next weekend or next week with some more questions. Let's see. Matthias here, booked with you for mid-May. Any recommendation on a safe town to book an Airbnb? So you can give the guys at Chico's. Tell Alex you talk to me. You're looking for a place to stay. They've got some cabins right in Fremont. They've got a cabin or a big lodge type place in Poisippi. Otherwise, if you look on like Lake Poygan, Winneconne, Butamore, any of that area will be good and safe. This whole area, the Winnebago system, short of some sketchy places in Oshkosh, I wouldn't recommend any real Airbnb stuff in Oshkosh. I'd suggest staying out on out on Poygan, Butamore, around that area, and you'll be safe, no problems whatsoever. Matt asked thoughts on the tungsten jigs. I've not got into tungsten jigs for walleyes yet. I do have a custom jig that I had designed and is being produced for me for slip bobbers. And I use that for not only walleyes, but for chasing deep water bluegills as well. That's about the only time I really throw tungsten. If I'm, up in the weeds and, fishing, walleyes and shallow weeds. The thing with tungsten is you don't want it to fall fast. You want a nice, slow, steady fall. So using light lead jigs is kind of the ticket to that. You don't want to be using something heavy that's going to fall super fast to the bottom. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure I got everybody's questions answered here. Oh, my buddy Jeff's on the raft. They just got their first one on the night. We've had a lot of crazy things happen in the last couple weeks around the house. A lot of stuff that don't really want to talk about. Just some crazy things that you'd never think would ever happen, close to you, and it has, and it's really kind of taken up a lot of my time here the last couple of weeks to handle all this stuff. Hopefully tomorrow we can wrap a few issues up and try and put everything behind us here and kind of move forward. And right now kids come first, and that's what we're fighting for. So I appreciate everybody being patient. If I haven't answered any phone calls or text message, please know it's not not that I don't want to. It's just we're preoccupied with some crazy stuff right now, and don't wish it upon anybody. But it is what it is, and we'll just move onward and upward, and get back to getting on the water every day. I think really that's all I got for you guys right now. We'll keep you posted here, more daily reports and stuff happening starting, this weekend and getting into next week. I say we just got to get over tomorrow yet, and things should get better for me. And good luck to anybody that's going to be heading out here this weekend, this week. Obviously, they got the NFL draft happening up in Green Bay, and a lot of people coming to town for that. I've actually got some guys looking, they're staying afterwards. You're going to do some fishing. And if you get a chance to get up there, have fun. I think it's going to be a great time. It looks like there's a lot of cool things to do, and maybe even try and see if I can get up a day with the boy. I know my dad's got some campers that are not full, so if you do want looking to go up to Green Bay and want a really cheap place to stay and park, I know he's got a few campers that are open. Sounds like a lot of the lodging and resorts and campgrounds and stuff like that, we're really expecting to see a huge influx. And I don't think there's as many people coming as what they thought. At least, the hotels and such aren't seeing the full capacity. So there's still a lot of rooms available. But the other thing too is I think a lot of people, being a small market like what we are, they're driving over from Minneapolis or Milwaukee, Madison, Chicago. It's only a couple hour drive. So with what these people were charging for rooms was kind of ridiculous. And, the parking, $100 for parking and such, it's just a great way to drive people away and not have them come and spend money because they've kind of gouged everything. So yeah, it is what it is. I'm glad I'm just not up in that neck of the woods. So I will leave it at that. I appreciate everybody joining in, all the questions tonight, and we will catch you guys next week. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free, shoot me a message or private message on Facebook, text message, and I'll do whatever I can to help you guys out. Have a good rest of the evening, and we'll catch you guys next week. Thanks, everybody.